This meeting, it's a meeting of national associations, which we've been having a series of for some time. But today we have attempted to bring everybody together. We don't know if we will get everybody, but I already see quite a few, and so we are about to start. I want to welcome you. I want to thank you all for joining us. I also have to thank Mr. Nelson Stokes, who during the initial series of meetings advised us of some successes that the Bobsled and Skeleton Association had been able to achieve as far as fundraising is concerned. And in that context, in the new and more collaborative context in which we are operating, he has volunteered to share that experience with us. We know that one size doesn't fit all, but we can learn and we can adapt accordingly. And so this morning we will have a presentation from Mr. Stokes regarding fundraising. But in addition to that, from way over in Japan, we also have a Mr. Julius Goldsmith, who will do a presentation as well, which is with regard to athletes and their branding. His entity is called Players for Players, and you'll hear more about that. We want to thank him for joining us along with his team, because, of course, those of you who know about the time frames, you'll know that in Japan now, it's somewhere past midnight. And so we are keeping him out of bed. So without further ado, with your permission, I will just ask the good Lord, who in his almighty state is able to bless us. We ask him for his guidance as we go into this discussion. We are scheduled to be here until what in our time is 12 midday, or officially we probably should say 12 p.m. And so I don't want to steal any time from Mr. Stokes. And so unless there is any overarching question, I will immediately ask Mr. Stokes to take over and guide us through his presentation. The floor is yours, Mr. Stokes.
All right, thank you very much. I want to welcome everyone to this morning's chat. My name is Chris Stokes. I have a number of first names. Well, for our purposes here, I'll go with Chris Stokes. I am a four-time Olympian, also at the moment president of the Jamaica Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation. As a professional, I am an economist and I focus on economic development policy. As an individual, and I'm an entrepreneur. I own and operate a fintech. So you're going to see a mix of all of that as I share my experiences today. I think it's important to not so much to correct Mr. Wilkes, but to have a little more nuanced introduction, which is that I am here not because of success, but I think more because of a willingness to try a long history of failing of what we're trying and bright sparks of some of those things working out. And that is what life is. You know, not everything is going to be a home run. But we have tried different things. We have been brave, we have been innovative, and it has borne fruit. And I think I have things to share about what we can do, as well as what we ought not to do. And I'm going to have a touch of policy in that as well. All right, by way of overview, I want to look at the why we are here, why sporting. Why is funding important in sport in Jamaica? I want to look at a couple of different funding models. And then I'm going to get into Jamaica Bobsleigh as a case study from what I've done in terms of branding and commercial development, innovative funding approaches, and then talk a little bit about a national approach to funding that's a little more innovative. And I'm not sure if you have anybody from the ministry online here, but I think through the different opportunities that I'm afforded, I'll be speaking about it more, Mr. Wilkes, as a national policy issue. And I believe that is where it is. I'll offer no more as evidence of the need for Jamaica for more funding in sport in Jamaica than the following four tables. This is from the recently concluded, I think yesterday may have been the closing ceremony, recently concluded Pan Am Junior Games, right? That's the first ever. We take a lot of pride in Jamaica in our athletics success, in our sporting success. But one of the things that becomes immediately evident is that it is not as broad as it should be. And I travel a lot through the region, through the Americas. I believe, for good reason, that Jamaica has the best athletes. We have some of the hardest working coaches. Funding is an issue, and the knowledge of sport development is an issue. I'm not saying that if you get money, you will win all of these medals, but I'm saying that it solves one of the issues in the equation. And there's a point where too much money develops bad habits, but that's not for today's talk. So Brazil finished at number one with 163 medals. All right, no, I don't believe, and Denzel, correct me if I'm wrong, that our track team was there. I'm immersed in bobsleigh, and I'm not sure what is going on in these other parts.
It wasn't there. It wasn't there.
Right. And therefore, what we find is that Jamaica is even on the table. We said the Dominican Republic with 23 medals in total, Canada with 10, Paraguay with 10, Uruguay, Venezuela with 36, Puerto Rico with 20. We see St. Kitts with one silver, Panama with 5 bronzes, so on and so forth. No Jamaica. So why is this important? It is important because the world of sports is huge. The range of sports, the roller skating, the different types of swimming, the combat sports. It's deep and wide. And Jamaica, I think, needs to provide for citizens far more opportunity to not only participate in the sport, but to compete globally. So we have some work to do in that respect. We have all, I think, well, certainly bobsleigh has done well off of track and field, not only its athletes, but its brand presence in the world. But I think we're at a stage now where we need to expand that materially to other sports so that we're getting a dozen other sports medaling at major multi-sport championships. Let's look a little bit at some of the funding models. From the government funding, there are countries, Germany, Canada, where the government does pays for national sport development at the national federation, foundation level, association level. And we see that in Canada, so that, for example, my colleagues from bobsleigh Canada gets over 80% of their budget from the government. All right. Government funding policy through the lottery. We see that in Australia. We see that in Great Britain, where almost the entire bobsleigh and skeleton program there is funded at the national level through lottery, which comes up, Denzel, to about 11 million pounds every 4 years, just in this sport, just to wrap your mind around it. Private sector funding, that's where the US gets most of their funding. And I'm going to say, I have it broken out here in domestic and international because it's important. Domestic, of course, is domestic companies. Now, a lot of the domestic US companies are also huge international companies. But it's also important for a sport like bobsleigh, where sponsoring us may be more attractive to a company overseas than to a domestic company, but we also need very strong domestic sponsorship. And there is, of course, the IOC funding through the National Olympic Committees, through the Solidarity Program. People talk a lot about the Olympic movement just making a lot of money. Well, they make a lot of money, yes, but they also give back a lot of money to the countries to be invested in the development of Olympic sports. So, for example, US bobsleigh gets 60%, and let this sink in for a second. Then they'll get 60% of their funding from their NOC, from the US Olympic Committee, 60%. And So that's going on into several $1 million. So the question then becomes, where does Jamaica fit in? Where are we? I don't believe our government is going to be able to write checks, full checks for all of the NOCs, all of the national associations. God bless the SDF. Bobsleigh in itself has benefited in innumerable ways from substantial and sustained funding from the SDF. And I don't think there's a medalist that has ever stood on any podium for Jamaica that has not benefited from funding from the SDF. So we're glad for that and the work that Supreme Ventures is doing, but there's a limit to that. There's also a limit, of course, to our private sector funding. Our companies are not that big. We keep going back to the same companies over and over again. And of course, our local NOC, I am sure, distributes funds from Solidarity to sporting associations. In fact, Bobsleigh has 3 Solidarity scholarships, which comes from Solidarity directly, and have benefited to some extent from the local NOC as well. So just to put a final point on it, Jamaica Bobsleigh, where are we? The government funding through the years has been, I have to say, from administration to administration, very, very helpful. Starting from the not necessarily the government itself, in fact, probably never the government itself. And as we get more disciplined fiscally, almost never from the government, but the JTA has stepped up, and the SDF has made really the program sustainable, particularly in the down years. I mean, so for example, last year the SDF spent going on $70,000 to get us a new track that we're able to train in Jamaica, and therefore we're getting some of the best start times now. On the international circuit. IOC funding through the NOC, I mentioned that the US gets about 60% of their funding from their NOC. We get less than 4%, but that's it's very, appreciated, welcomed, glad to have it. But where we have to look is private sector funding and brand development, and and it's an irony in life that those associations like Bobsleigh, like most of the sports associations in Jamaica, are required to do, who have less are required to do more. In other words, you come from a poorer country with less multi-billion-dollar international companies. So you now have to do more with the little that you have, and it becomes very important. So let me speak a little bit about how we go about achieving that. And this is very important, guys. And if I don't make another point today, I'd like to make this, and hopefully the gentleman that follows me can go a little deeper on this. It's very important to develop the sport brand. We are always around the athlete brand. We are around Usain Bolt, but we are in a situation with Usain Bolt and Shelley and I go back to Mr. McKinley through DQ up until today, and a lot of that brand value has either gathered in the athletes themselves or in an amorphous idea of sport in Jamaica, which we need to capture. I'll speak to that in a little bit. But it has not been captured significantly, sufficiently, I believe, in, for example, the J3. And this is something that I've spoken to my dear friend, President Garth Gill about, in terms of the J3A itself, capturing and keeping onto in itself and being able to sell, for example, the J3A brand. The JFF has done some work on that, but it is very important that the brand is in the association and not only in the athletes. Why is that important? Part of the reason why Jamaica Bobsleigh is going on over 30 years is that we have retained the brand in the federation and not in individual athletes. So it's not like when Dudley Stokes retired, that's the end of Jamaica Bobsleigh. Athletes come and go. People don't even know at times who are the specific members of the team. But when I open a door and knock on a corporate door in the US and I say Jamaica Bobsleigh, they know what I'm talking about. And that is one of the things that we need to spend some time on, getting the individual sports association to develop a marketable brand. And I will let me just spend a little bit of time on that, because the on brand development, we just a simple idea like the logo. That logo at the top was the logo we had from our beginning, and we used it through, that's from 1988 to 2014. And we got out of company as it became more and more, we need to refresh our brand, bring in more funds, so on and so forth. They brought in a company, and they developed the brand that you see, the logo that you see at the bottom, right? Which is what we call the curve. Now, it may seem to you like it would take, a couple of hours to just design that. That came out of a very rigorous program that lasted about 6 months of interviews with athletes, with stakeholders, with fans about what does Jamaica bobsleigh mean? What does it represent? How should it be positioned in the market? How is it supported by performance on the ice? And this image with the Jamaica flag image, with a curve, with a sharp point heading upwards, represents all the good things about Jamaica bobsleigh. So it's, and I understand from the experts that communicates more subliminally. And I have to say there's something to it, because the response that we have gotten from the corporate world, having changed this logo, has been material. In other words, they can reflect more to the brand than something that is more realistic, like the one that you see, the brand above. And it's something we need to, it's another class and session entirely, but it's something that we need to pay attention to. All right. Another important part of the JBF case and raising funds is your governance. People want to know that you have a board of directors, that you have a chairman, that you have meetings, that you have minutes, that you have financial reports, that you have structures. We have athletes agreements that are tilted materially towards the athletes. 1 second, please. Yeah, that are tilted towards athlete, because that is what we're about, right? So if you look on our website, you see all our policies and procedures, athletes agreements, how athletes ought to behave themselves, what the brand means, how we defend the brand, what our PR policies, so on and so forth. And that becomes very important, because when you get in the C-suites in the biggest countries in the world, they're asking you about, they're not giving you money, they're looking to get into a commercial arrangement with you, and they're asking you about your governance structure. All right, so that is something that I think, and I mentioned at the end, that needs to be in place very much. The other thing is, when somebody is giving you money, they either want some sort of a tax benefit, or at the very least, they want to make sure that it is being spent on what you say it's being spent on. The financial reports are very important. Obviously, Mr. Wilkes and the STF know that this is an issue, it's an issue of scale, cost versus benefit. And I'm going to suggest how we take that on going forward. But we all can't be paying, top 5 accounting firms to be doing our annual audits. But policies, procedure, governance, meetings, accountabilities is indispensable in getting funding at a high level, nationally, internationally. All right. One of the things that we did, for example, in Jamaica bobsleigh, which I'm going to encourage a discussion about, has to do with the foundation. We created the Jamaica Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation Foundation, which is a 501c3 incorporated in Florida, and it's governed by the IRS. That has allowed us this year to raise upwards of $100,000 from persons who would normally have wanted to sponsor, but weren't quite there, or would have given in a crowdfunding or some sort of campaign, who they want to give a little bit more than that, but they want the tax benefits. So we created this foundation that has really worked well for this year. It's chaired by a young man named attorney out of Orlando, Florida, named Sekou Clark. Some of you may remember him from his days at Champs. He's our chairman. Our vice chairman is David Smith. Dave Smith, former Clarendon called the Sprinter, and executive for Pepsi, for Coca-Cola. So you have to give folks the mechanisms that they can contribute to your organization through. All right, and the foundation is one. No, am I suggesting that each and every Jamaica Sporting Association opens a 501c3 in the US? Probably not. And one of the things that we want to look at is creating a 501c3 sport foundation in the US that covers all of the different sports that folks can go in, choose the sport that they are contributing to instead of paying it over to the federal government. Make the contribution to either, to the program that they choose. So they could go in and choose netball or volleyball or field hockey or whatever. But that would give us scale and get us out of each and every person having to form their own foundation. So that's another policy agenda item I want to put on the table, Mr. Wilkes, going forward. So the two important things from here, the governance structure. And again, we can do some more work on getting everybody up to speed on the governance structure. Many are, some are not, some just need a little help. But if we can set those governance structure standards, get people there, and not just from what the NOC or the IOC wants, but really what the commercial backer is looking for from a governance structure, what the commercial backer is looking for in terms of tax benefits from donating. And of course, at the moment in Jamaica, we do not have a tax deduction for sports associations, but that's a complex issue, but something worth revisiting. A couple of meat and potato things that I think we all need to follow that I'll encourage you. And again, I'm very easy to get a hold of. I'd encourage you to reach out to me if you want to get any deeper in any one of these. One of the things that we're doing right now is, I don't know if some of you guys remember a company called Sprung out of, that used to do swimwear. We're working with the principal lady named Denise Katz. She's now in Florida. And we're doing a merchandising scheme of a clothing line, which is being launched as we get ready for the Olympics, and we'll have a big splash during the Olympic Games itself. And they are the ones who are actually designing the gear that we are wearing now, and that Puma is considering for the Olympic Winter Games. That's a meat and potatoes thing. I'm going to talk about it again a little bit in a couple of minutes. I'm going to have about another minute or two, but allow me to get into that in a little bit more. At one point, we had a bar and restaurant, where you could go into Montego Bay, into the airport there, go into a Jamaica bobsleigh store, buy t-shirts, miniature bobsleighs. We had miniature bobsleighs on sale in Japan. We had, you could go into a Jamaica bobsleigh restaurant on the Bottom Road in Montego Bay. We don't have the restaurants or bar now, because that is an entirely separate business with its own challenges. We may revisit. We have seen examples of just very recently, Joe Namath's restaurant and Tiger Woods' restaurant that while the team is qualified, I'm looking at those business models to revisit with Jamaica bobsleigh in terms of how we can have a successful bar and restaurant business. And it's something that we're doing for Jamaica bobsleigh, but I think we could have a Jamaica sport bar. Nothing wrong with that. Through the years, we have done some interesting commercial deals. Ria Neville was our first sponsor, but they had to drop out because hard liquor was banned. Red Stripe was on board and got a tremendous amount of publicity because we took the sled with the big red stripe on it to the first day of training, and we should not have done that. We understood we should not have done that. We fully intended to remove it before we trained, but they got so much publicity out of that. I mean, they were so happy with it, and we have maintained a good relationship with them in 2018. You remember that at the Olympics when we had an issue, we didn't have a sled. They actually bought a $70,000 US sled for us right there on the spot while we were in Pyeongchang. We've had a very good relationship with Sandals in terms of going to town hall meetings for them when we traveled with the team, greeting tourists in some of their target markets, visiting their properties, signing things for them, doing photo ops and so on. That has worked well. Also, MoneyGram, in terms of making the connection between the diaspora and Jamaica, had a very good relationship with them. That included branded and focused, did a lot of work around the Vancouver games as well. Coca-Cola has been an ongoing partner, Coke Zero, and they're part of the Olympic movement as well. So we do something with them from time to time. Our most recent endorsement was from Caesar Dog Food, where, you know, sort of went on and promoted the dog food, and that went very well. And a huge deal which include funds and filming from Samsung. So these things are out there. You'll notice that the Jamaican companies that we do have, you know, we don't have Digicel and Water and, you know, sort of the usual suspects. Grace has helped us a bit, and we do knock on these doors, and we do get help from time to time. But because of the size of the budgets that we are dealing with, we normally end up with big global companies. Again, what did they look at? Would I be proud to be associated with your brand? Can your brand help me to sell my products and services? Can I see your books? Can I see who is your president? Who is your board? What are you discussing at board meetings? What are your policies? Are at least being treated fairly, so on and so forth. And we're able to demonstrate all that and keep our relationships in good form. I do not have Puma on this list, but they have been with us over a stretch here, and it has worked out very, very, very well. Last two things I want to talk about on this is the innovative approaches to fundraising. The first is a non-fungible token, which we have brought into the market with this, a lot of press. We are aiming to raise, going on $1 million. So we raised a US, that is, we raised $10,000 in fairly short order. We have that program on pause now because one of the major pieces of art that we want to put out is in collaboration with a movie studio. And no prizes for guessing which movie studio. But once other movies saw Jamaica bobsleigh Cool Runnings going forward, they wanted a piece of it. So now Disney is putting in place a division to not only do our project, but to do other projects, Little Mermaid and so on and so forth. So we do have a little pause on that, which is not the best thing for us because we are in the midst of a qualification season now. But I get the long-term vision, and I'm very glad to play a role in changing the trajectory of not only the movie business, but fundraising in sport. So this is just digital pieces of art that people use cryptocurrency to buy online. And it is absolutely somewhere that we need to go. Digital Rastas is doing very well. Or there's a tremendous amount of interest in our art. We have sold quite a few pieces and much more to be sold. And I'm open to working with each association as to how they could do their token. But more importantly, which is what I'll punctuate the matter with at the end, is that we need more of a national approach to this. We also launched a crowdfunding campaign, brought in, I think, around $3,000 in the first couple of days. We are aiming for 600,000. And again, our big push for that will be actually during the Olympic Games. So the last time I had a big crowdfunding, we raised about $80,000 within a 48-hour period with a sense of urgency just before the Olympics. We'll be a little bit more prepared now, but we expect to raise quite a bit of funds from the crowdfunding. And a lot of folks would have contributed to the crowdfunding have simply given to the foundation as an easy way to do that as well. $3,065. All right, so towards a national strategy, and let me end with this. The first thing that we need to capture is the sport brand Jamaica. When I represent Jamaica bobsleigh, people tell me about Usain Bolt. I want them to tell me about the J3 because I think it's better for the country if they talk about the National Association. Because why? The J3 invests heavily in the next Usain Bolt, or the guy who is in all likelihood is not going to make it, but needs a chance, needs an opportunity. And from a policy perspective, I think that is where we need to put our resources, and that is where I'd like to see the funds accumulate. So we need to capture sport brand Jamaica. When the basketball team is playing and the interviewers are asking them about Cool Runnings, are you the Hot Runnings, for example? It's because Jamaica bobsleigh is part of the sport fabric of Jamaica. I got my first pair of spikes from Herb McKinley before I even got into bobsleigh. Herb McKinley is part of the sport fabric. Basketball is becoming part of the sport fabric. Track and field is a major theme in the sport fabric. So I'm saying we need to get all of that together and not try for each of us to go individually and create a sport brand Jamaica. And within that sport brand Jamaica, you can have sport brand Jamaica bobsleigh, sport brand Jamaica track, sport brand Jamaica equestrian, sport brand Jamaica swimming, and then develop from there a clothing line. So I have a t-shirt there. Let's say that there are 14 sports brands. I can collect all 14 t-shirts. I can collect all 14 pieces of digital art and pay for it. And that money goes into Sport Jamaica and is divided among the teams. And Desmond, if you don't share anything else with your chairman, the idea of us stop fighting these skirmishes as individual organizations and coming together and clothing ourselves in sport brand Jamaica and leveraging that brand and monetizing that brand, I think is the way to go. And it's not each man for himself. So we need to sit down with Puma, for example, develop the clothing line with each different sport as a sub piece of art and distribute that and market that. All right. We need to get together with the art collectors or the NFT collectors and have a range of Sport Jamaica collectible NFTs. And if you can imagine, if each sport association can get $20,000 a year out of that, that's helping a lot. And it can be done, but we have to stop doing it one at a time. So the Puma has a role, the sports ministry, culture, entertainment, the SDF has a big role to play in this. We all need to come together. But it can be done. So we need to collaborate on the branding and the monetizing of the branding. And as I mentioned before in a previous meeting, we need to collaborate on the back end. Not every association needs to have its own general secretary sitting in an office working. We can share that facility, we can share office space, we can share printing, we can share mails, emails, website development, these sorts of things, all right? So we need a much more collaborative approach. And I know there are initiatives in various places for this, but you know, when you sit where I sit, you don't have the luxury. There are no points for talking about it. You have to get it done. I have to get the guy on the ice and he has to finish in the top 5 of every race or he's not going to qualify for the Olympics. I don't get to speak about it theoretically. So I'm encouraging everyone on this call and the SDF through its influence on the Ministry of Sport, Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport to take a more coherent collaborative approach, targeting the diaspora with single bodies that bring together all our sports associations, encapsulates, leverages the Sport Jamaica brand, but has space for each individual sport so that we can each benefit from this pie. Right now, it is just out there in the ether, and the guys who are doing all the fake stuff are making all the money and getting all the joy from that. All right. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes.
I really, this is really a far-reaching presentation. I mean, trust me, I've deliberately allowed you to go over the time allotted because of how rich, genuinely, the presentation is. And I already have concluded that this can't just be a one-off thing. Not that you will have to make another presentation, but we, together all, have to continue this. And as you say, not just discussion, but implementation. But I really appreciate that you have made some critical points, the foundation, establishment, something we have been encouraging all along. What we have been mainly saying is every national association become charitable in Jamaica. And I understand your registration overseas, but within Jamaica, we do have a charitable status entity that can raise funds without being a profiteering thing. And you can use those funds to build the sport. You have mentioned the governance. I mean, we have been singing that song all our lives, or 25 years, 26 years that we've been around. The governance structure is absolutely critical. It must be believable, to put it in the simplest terms. We talk about transparency and accountability. And then you have mentioned the critical things, the sale of paraphernalia, the branding, how you approach the corporate, the crowdfunding, the various methods. The tax deductible aspect of it is something that we all need to come together with government on this so that it is seen, because government is stretching and they can't manage much more in terms of what we get. But if they do that, you may very well bring more of the corporate entities in it. So thank you for the presentation. We are recording so that we don't have to go it over and over, and we'll be able to share it. We have to have a little session where persons can respond to it. So immediately we throw open the floor. Any questions, any suggestions that we want to make before we move on to the next presentation?
In the last meeting, we touched on shared governance and a few issues that the small associations such as ours have in spending more time on bureaucracy than on development of our sport. And funding is always a problem, especially with the smaller associations that don't necessarily have Olympic level competitors at this stage, but they have quite a strong foothold of the sport in the country and have done for, since time. So for me, this whole discussion is huge and could have a huge impact on our sport by collaborating with infrastructure required to do these things. Because as a small association, I understand and I've discussed all the details mentioned, but there's just no way our association is too small to even start to have the human resources to make it happen.
I hear you loud and clear. Chris, you want to take it first before I come in?
I think that we and I mentioned this before, I think we have to be careful not to see business models and think that, oh, they're doing it, they could work for us. It can't. I mean, one of the breakthrough points that I learned in bobsleigh is that even though we are in the same sport as Germany, we can't bobsleigh like Germans do. We don't know that's their thing. We wouldn't even know. But what we do know is they can't bobsleigh like we can.
Right? This is true.
Right. So you need to have confidence in yourself and what you're doing. And I think there is a role, and in our context, and this is a central point, we have not been collaborating anywhere near enough. We should have a long, and it's water under the bridge, and no time like the present time, have faith and all of that. So granted, but we ought to have in place centralized administration, centralized accumulation of brand value, centralized production and distribution of merchandise. So it's as easy for me to buy merchandise from equestrian as it is from track and field, because it's on the same shelf, and people will buy it. People don't understand. I showed you the list of sport. How sport rich the world is. I'll tell you something. There's a town called Lake Placid where the team is now, Denzel, for the last 3 qualification races, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't even call it equestrian. They're not even that. It's a horse riding town. I mean, if I had equestrian t-shirt, Jamaica, I couldn't keep it on the shelf. But that is where they had the Winter Olympics in 1980. That's our home track. Yeah. But in the summer, every rider from everywhere in America goes there. Yeah. So I just go to say that we need to make sure that our lack of perspective doesn't constrain us. All right. We really need to come together.
All right, Chris, I'm going to literally breaking into you, not to steal a thunder, but listen, you'll probably be shocked by this. Denzel Riggs, I've never traveled with a national team overseas. I've never seen it. But I've been around sport for the last 50 years, and I've been in touch with the track and field and the football people. And everybody tells me, just like you have just said, people will walk up to them, see them in a Jamaica branded shirt, and want to buy it from them. I don't mean they have it in their hand. I mean them have it on. And they want you to take it off and give it or sell it to them. And when I hear this, I am shocked to know somebody contacted me recently when when the Jamaica-USA match was to be played to find out how to get a Jamaica Reggae Boys shirt. No, that should not happen. We should have Reggae Boys shirt coming through our ears when you're walking around, you just see it. So somebody want one, just know you just go over there so you buy one. And all right, let me answer directly to the question.
All over the world with my sport, polo more than equestrian. And I went everywhere I travel with a Rasta belt because it's one of the best belts to use for riding. It's flexible, it can be washed, it absorbs sweat. And people love when I bring them the gift of a Rasta belt. And I will tell you that on a trip to Argentina, I gave my hosts, one of the top polo players in the world, a Rasta belt. You know, it's not a lot of money. But that man, one of the top polo players in the world, prided that thing so much that he wore it to play in the highest tournament in the world. And they won the tournament. And there he is standing on the podium with his Rasta belt, you know. So you're 100%. I understand what you're saying.
All right, let me just respond this way. The National Sporting Associations, yes, we work with them from the SDF level, but something that I always recognize, that each one is an independent entity. And sometimes I have to remind my directors and that I cannot give a direction. I can speak to them, I can try to persuade them in a particular direction, but there is an independence and it's there for a reason. What I'm leading to is that each of you, small or large, can call each other and say, let us get together so we can set up this group of, not the 60 that are around, you know. Let's say 7, 8 of the smaller ones who can't afford to pay for their annual audit individually. You can come together as a grouping. And when you do that, you can call the SDF and says, listen, we are doing this. What level of assistance can you give us, whether it's just by virtue of advising you or if we can slip a little thing in there in terms of some level of finance. But I want what I hear Chris saying, you know, is that don't doubt yourself, reach out, take it on, start doing things. Don't think that government has to start it, because as small as you may be, you are an independent entity. And when you decide to collaborate, it's your decision. You have every right to do it. And we are here saying, do it. Even if we can't help you to do it, we are saying, do it, because it's going to help you all. Sorry, we can't spend a lot more time on this, but that's critical. Somebody else wants to come in here.
This is Calbert Hutchinson with the Jamaica Lacrosse Association. I would just like to congratulate Mr. Stokes on a well-received presentation. And it just bring home the fact that us within the Jamaica Lacrosse Association is on the right path. I must say that we have taken the step already to establish a 501c3 in the States. We are fine-tuning our governance structure and setting our funding target. I would, however, love to collaborate with Mr. Stokes. So if I can get some contacts, maybe sometime after this call, I can bounce some ideas off you and see where we're at and see how best you can advise us going forward. But based on your presentation, we can tell that we're on the right path.
Sorry, Calvert, let me take that up. And Corinne or somebody, Mr. Willis, can just share that contact information.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we will. Rest assured.
Thank you.
But lacrosse is recognized as one of the better organized and governed associations. I'm glad to work with you on that.
And let's just say our website, the SDF website, is not where we want it to be, but we are constantly working on it, and very soon we will have a revamp. But even now as we speak, if you go there, you will be able to find contact listing, but we will even do it even more directly. But it's on the website, and it's about 57 national associations, and if it's not there right now for those two, we will make sure that it's there.
Morning, everybody. Horian Brown here from Jamaica Lawn Bowling Association. Mr. Stokes, great presentation. I understand overall where you're going with this, and I support it 100%. I think overall we definitely need to focus more on the associations than specific athletes, and the overall idea that you have given in terms of the model going forward, I think should be adopted by every association, and they should work to build on that. I have one specific question, though, specifically in regards to the Jamaican themed sports bar. How feasible you think that idea is in regarding regular Jamaican tourism markets in terms of where people travel from to Jamaica, in terms of having a facility like that in those airports, just off the top of my head?
So the restaurant business is one of the hardest businesses in the world. I mean, let's start with that. It's one of the easiest businesses to fail at, and it's easy for things to not go well. And the complaint I had from the company that was managing ours is that the food was growing feet and walking out the back of the shop, which is, I get that. All right. So
I know all about that.
Yeah,
Very familiar with that kind of food.
Yeah. That's a new is a mutant food that they can grow foot and walk out the back of it. And that when you're talking about 2 and 3% margins, that's problematic. What I have seen from both Tiger Woods and Joe Namath's places, and I'm grateful to them for accommodating me, is you know what, the restaurant and the experience is important, and it needs to be a well-run restaurant. That is the first thing. All right. The name and the branding will get you support on the margin. There's no reason why we should not have, if done properly, a Jamaica sports Jamaica, not Jamaica, a sports Jamaica bar with screens all around where you can watch lawn bowling. You can watch lacrosse in your little corner, your little booth, or watch the regular boys playing on the big screen over the bar. But each of us individually trying to do it, and I'm saying this 30 years into as an athlete and as an administrator. As I get older, one of I won't say regrets, but one of the things that I'm sorry I haven't been able to do is bring along more Jamaican sports associations on the journey. Because we started so far behind and have gotten so far. And I know just a little encouragement, a little collaboration. More people can do well, more people can qualify for the Olympics, more people can end up on the podium. And if nothing else, that spirit of working together, not in a way that I am the boss, so therefore I do what I say, but and it may sound corny, but Jamaica matters, the country matters. All right. And we can do, when I look at that model and see what Guatemala and these other, the range of sports that they are meeting winning medals in, and it's not me, I'm just reporting what is on the sheet. We have a lot of work to do, but it can be done. I think we're going in the right direction. But the idea that I am doing my thing and you doing your thing, God bless, it's not going to work. It's not the way forward. Let the Germans do that, or the Canadians. Jamaica, we have to hug up each other, because all of us together barely make one.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Chris. Wonderful.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. I really want to say, because I'm feeling very pleased right now just at what is going on here. It is only the beginnings of what we're talking about, but I just want you to know, I remember Professor Edward, what's his name? Professor, he died recently, was in a wheelchair. What's his name? I just remember him saying that we must learn to celebrate the incremental, so that sometimes when you want to get far and you cannot get frustrated, but when you realize that you have made a few steps forward, just pause and celebrate, because that will encourage you to make the other steps that will take you there. So right now, just the fact that this is happening is a major achievement for me. And at this point in time, we have on our screens Mr. Julius Goldsmith from an entity called Players for Players. Professor Edwin Jones is the gentleman I was talking about. Yes. He taught me some many years ago, as you would work out. And he did say we must learn to celebrate the incremental. But back to Mr. Goldsmith. Mr. Goldsmith, old people tend to ramble a little bit. Allow me half a minute. There's a school in Jamaica called Kingston College. There was a man who went there in 1962. His name was Youngster Goldsmith. I don't know if you have any relation to him, but he went to Kingston College in 1962 and introduced weight training as a way of preparing for athletics. After that, between 1962 and 1975, Kingston College won boys' champs every year, 14 years straight. I don't know if you bring that level of achievement, but let's start with what you have. You're going to talk about the athletes now. Chris Nelson spoke about the branding of Jamaica and the national associations, all of that. I hear you will speak more about the individual branding, but which many athletes are trying to understand, and they recognize that they can make something from it. So right about now, you do the rest. I don't know enough about you to make a grand introduction. So it's all up to you, and we thank Marcherie for making the connection between us and Japan. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start with just a quick story. And I think, Mr. Stokes, from what I listened to and what I heard, was about the economics, the ecosystem of sports, and the challenges around monetization. Whether you're an athlete or an association, collectively, if you're not in an ecosystem and you understand you're in an ecosystem, it's going to be always a challenge. So I think while I'm here to clearly talk about athletes and the way they are challenged with monetization, and we're not talking about the top 5%, we're talking about the working athletes, the remaining 95%. My colleagues and I started on a journey a year ago. We've spoken to over 100 athletes globally, US, Japan, the Netherlands, and the common thread is that it's challenging. It's challenging to monetize their personal brand. It's challenging because some of the social media platforms require you to be at a high level before you earn money. So with that, that short story, I'm going to lead in by saying thank you, Ms. Grant and Mr. Wilkes, for inviting myself and my colleagues. My name is Julius Goldsmith. I'm with playersforplayers.com. I also have my colleagues, Houston Ross, as well as Henry as well. So you see Houston's coming on right now as well. Sorry, it's for us, it's 1 a.m, but we're excited to be here and to give a little bit about what Players for Players is about. And I'm sorry, that's Henry Seals is also here. And Henry is actually the gentleman who connected us to Ms. Grant with respect to this opportunity. So Henry, why don't you just give a brief introduction about yourself while I, if you don't mind, and talk a little about Players for Players.
Just before you come in, Henry, just want to say, we are speaking about Miss Grant, and you'll probably see Marcherie on the screen. Marcherie yes. Grant is actually an employee of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. So we both belong to the same ministry. We worked together some long time ago at the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica. I was on the board and she worked there. And the connection was made so that she told us about this possibility. So that's how the connection worked. All yours, Mr. Seals.
Thank you. My name is Henry Seals. I'm with Players for Players. I'm their chief HR officer. I've been in Japan for 27 years, and I'm a Japanese citizen, originally born in the United States. And what I wanted to just explain my connection here is that I've worked for various startups in Japan. I've worked for large organizations. And one of the things that you find that is the key strength of businesses that grow, businesses that have IPO'd or been purchased and that have grown, have exited, is that they create a marketplace. They create, I think, they create sort of like an ecosystem that then consumers, as well as those providing products, can then leverage and use to use. I've seen this occur many times, particularly here in Asia, as companies are starting to grow. The successful ones have been able to create that. And I think COVID has made us realize very clearly that it takes a community, right, to not only raise a child, but to raise an individual and get us through challenging times. I've worked here in Japan for my entire life. I met Marjorie, Miss Grant is a friend of my wife. My wife is Jamaican, I'm not. My wife is Jamaican. They've been friends since college, maybe high school, I think it was college. And she was attending a university here in Japan, and we got to know each other. So when we started this venture, Players for Players, and we realized that we have a solution for athletes to monetize their brand, as well as an opportunity for consumers to really engage athletes in a way they have never done before. And my colleagues Julius and Houston will share that with you. I shared with my wife, said, Marjorie works for ministry sports, I think, in Jamaica. You should maybe mention to her, because there are probably a lot of athletes who can benefit from the program. And there you have it. I reached out to Marjorie and she reached out to you. So thank you very much. And because of time, with no further ado, I'll let Julius and Houston, I'll let Houston introduce himself, and then we'll get started to share with you our service.
All right, thank you again for having us here. And for the sake of time, just a real brief introduction to myself. My name is Houston Ross. Like Julius, I'm American. I've been in Japan, if I total it all together, probably around 14, 15 years. I spent the bulk of my background in finance, but always from the technology side. I started my career with IBM, Lehman Brothers, where Julius and I, going back 20 years, where we first met, to Morgan Stanley, Lehman Brothers to Morgan Stanley. Then I went into an insurance and asset management, where I worked my way up to Chief Technology Officer for AXA. I was a Chief Information Officer in ING, to Chief Operating Officer to National Nederlanden in Japan, as well as in Czech Republic and Slovakia. And then back to Japan in a fintech, where I joined as a Chief Technology Officer in payments. Building and scaling a payments business, an online platform business. And just this October, we were purchased by PayPal for over $3 billion. And then, of course, in parallel, we started the journey around P4P, as we affectionately call Players for Players. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Houston. And just by way of background, I'm a lawyer. I worked on Wall Street. As Henry mentioned, I worked on Wall Street for 20 plus years. I have a law degree and a CPA. I worked for Solomon Brothers, Lehman Brothers, GE Capital. So I lived in Asia, London, New York. I did it all. My basic skill set is that I have a way of listening to conversations like this. And between my legal and finance background, I'm able to pull it together and put in the proper governance, to put in proper documentation. I can check the finance side. So I can do everything other than what Houston can do, which is on the IT and technology branding side. So in that sense, myself, Henry, and Houston make a good team. And without further ado, I'm going to go right into the presentation that we prepared for you. So really, I'm going to share a message from one of our athletes. How about now? Is it okay now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Like kickboxing and mixed martial arts, there's not massive amounts of money like in the big sports, like in football, soccer, basketball, baseball, things like that. In these smaller industries or sports where the sponsorships aren't as common or as big in terms of the number, how much money, if you get a deal for $500 a month, but your manager, whoever got you the deal, is taking their 20%. With these big sponsors, obviously they're paying to be associated with your name and your brand as an athlete. So they might require, hey, we need X amount of posts for our product per week or per month. Then that's then taking the athlete's personal brand and it's making them like a walking and talking billboard for these other companies. And yes, that is how that exchange works. But if fans are coming onto your platform to view your content, but all they're getting is advertisements for this company and that company and that company, it kind of takes away some of the realness and the authenticity. But as athletes, to make the money from the sponsors, we have to do what they ask. They're putting out the content directly and they're receiving those little, as you called them, micro sponsorships. There's no middleman. It's just the athlete, the content, and the fans who are paying directly for it. Something like P4P, where we're putting out content that we want to put out. For me personally, like an example would be training footage or training tips. That's stuff that no one's telling me to do it, yet I'm still able to monetize that.
So thank you for that. So Tiffany Van Soos is the current kickboxing champion. She's a member of P4P, and we had a discussion with her around why would she join P4P and what it means to her. So that's what you heard from an athlete's perspective. And I think it kind of echoes some of the sentiment that was shared about small markets or small associations. So with that, I'm just going to go into what is P4P. And fundamentally, what we've done is created a global online hub where particularly professional, semi-professional, and retired athletes, we help them to grow and manage and monetize their brand. And I think Mr. Stokes, that's what the key point was, just monetization. So what we've done is allows professional athletes to monetize their brand through direct marketing channels. And that would be towards customers as well as businesses, consumers and businesses. But it also, on the other side of the ecosystem, is basically allows local businesses to get involved to support the local professional teams or athletes. And that's where the micro sponsorship also plays a role in an ecosystem of sports. So I think if I looked at Mr. Stokes' agenda in the presentation, it made sense because in the context of a global platform or a big brand, you're able to attract the larger names. But there's a lot of medium-sized companies, insurance companies, real estate companies that would also like to be associated with a brand or an association, be it an athlete or a team. And our platform at P4P allows them to also support an athlete or an association's endeavors. So what this P4P does in a nutshell is it positions the ecosystem to allow players to better monetize themselves and have a better financial future. And that's what P4P is in a nutshell. So how does it work? It works through a network, an online network as created by Houston and a whole team of engineers. And on one side of the network is the athlete network. And the other side of the network is fans and sponsors. And that network is a two-sided network, we call it internally, because that's the ecosystem of this world of sports. You have athletes, you have fans, and you have sponsors. And what it allows from an athlete perspective, you heard Tiffany providing feedback that, hey, what I can do on P4P is I can post my content, I can schedule appearances, I can refer other athletes, and I can sell paraphernalia or goods and services, goods on P4P. And that's the athlete, which is a brand in themselves. And what that allows the fan to do is to subscribe to the athlete's content, to connect with the athlete by way of live streaming, like what we're doing right now. Also, fans can give shout outs to their favorite athlete. If it's a big game or big match, they are taking the initiative to reach out to the athlete to say, have a great game, have a good match, have a good run. And it also allows the athlete the fans to go through marketplace to purchase goods. And I think when I listened to this discussion that we had this morning, earlier in the part of the morning, marketplace plays a huge role at a macro and micro level with respect to having the ability to buy the Jamaican paraphernalia globally. And that's what P4P represents to both an athlete and to a fan, because the marketplace is global. And so that in that context, sponsors, we talked about the micro advertising, sponsors can come onto the platform at a micro level within the community, within the country. They're able to identify that affinity that they have, be it for bobsled, be it for the basketball team, be it for a particular athlete. It also allows the sponsors to support athletes' community programs. We have one community or association that does youth basketball. And what the sponsor wants to do is the sponsor wants to pay for the children to participate in the athletic event, in the sports community program. And that's a wonderful way for sponsors to have a different view around paying their money and seeing it directly contributing to children who are now supporting the growth of your athletes, their mindset, that whole spirit of community. So this is another way sponsors through P4P are allowed to support athletes as well as associations relative to monetization, albeit a different type of monetization. So the final aspect is that sponsors can sell their goods at the marketplace. So just taking a step back, P4P is the ecosystem by which at our foundation, it's athletes, because quite frankly, everyone does know who Usain Bolt is. But that doesn't mean that the whole ecosystem that's around an athlete of that nature can't benefit from it if you're acting as a collective. And again, that's what P4P represents. So here you'll see P4P's direct engagement platform, where an athlete registers on the platform and fans basically register as well and subscribe or go live streaming or give shout outs or go to the marketplace to buy goods as well as sponsors. Next page. So how do we benefit monetarily? So the first thing we did was set up security, and that goes to the governance. At Players for Players, we engaged a company called Stripe. Stripe is the company that allocates all the funds. We do not take anyone's personal banking information. That's not what our business is. We intentionally brought in Stripe because it's safe and secure. So on the left side is what the athletes would earn based on their being a member of P4P. And on the right side, you can think of it as what the sports associations would earn, either individually or collectively as a result of being on P4P. So I'm going to talk about the athlete side first. So how does an athlete, as a member of your association, benefit? For every subscriber who comes onto the platform and subscribes to that athlete, they would get paid $1. It's just that simple. They have 5,000 followers, they collect $5,000 a month. In terms of live streaming, what we're doing right now, the athlete is in a position to set the fee relative to where they are in their career, and the athlete would take 80%, we would have a 20% platform fee. And that 20% platform fee is consistent with all social media platforms. It's always a 20%. In terms of sponsor revenues, it's a similar ratio. It's a 70-30. And the reason why it's a 70-30 split with 70% going to the athlete is because we do have a marketing team. So the sports association, the athlete would be working with the marketing team in terms of targeting where we think their audience is relative to their popularity, where they are in their career, where they're playing, because we understand that athletes are journeymen. And quite frankly, a lot of the athletes are exported from their home countries and they play in various leagues around the world. And then finally, for referrals, if an athlete refers another athlete, they would collect 10%, 10 cents for every athlete, for every referral that is made to the platform. So they create their own referral network of athletes. And based on their personality, their goodwill, they're able to have other athletes join the platform. Therefore, they're able to benefit from that monetarily. And so the other side of that would be how the sports associations could benefit. And then it's very simple. For every athlete that you or that is a member of your sports association, and we're talking professional and semi-professional, the sports association would earn 10 cents per each fan who makes a payment to the network. So very simple. Let's say a sports association has 20 athletes or sports associations. It doesn't mean you can't come collectively to the earlier point. If you decided to group 4 or 5 smaller sports associations together, you can register your athletes on P4P. And let's say these 20 athletes for these 4 or 5 sports associations are able to generate 50,000 subscribers. And we're talking globally. But then what that would represent is a payment of $5,000 per month to the association. So if you take a step back, what we've created is that ecosystem. That means, yes, the athlete gets a lot of the press, but you heard Tiffany, in some sports, she's not making a lot of money. But however, in the context of being on the platform with other athletes, and in the context of being in social media, she's able to leverage her brand from a collective perspective. So that's where sports associations, if they think through how they want to organize themselves, they can come onto the platform either individually or collectively. And the way that's done is you create what we call a business page. And on your business page, you would have your athletes, their content, their personalities, their photos, and et cetera. And based on that, fans would subscribe to your business page. And therefore, we'd be able to share in the economics of this global sports organization. So that's our platform in a very high level. Let me just take you to the next, just to show you the team. And I won't go through this, all of them, but basically we're a global team where Roger, myself, Houston, and Henry are based in Tokyo. We have a CEO in the Netherlands. We have a CEO in the US. We have our marketing leader in Germany, and we have our product specialist in Hong Kong. So we're already a global organization dedicated to supporting the economics within the sports community to benefit athletes and to benefit those associations who see the value in partnering either together or individually to generate leads and income for themselves. So we only had a few minutes, so I tried to give you as much of a high-level discussion of what Players for Players is, and then I would just turn it over just maybe 5 minutes to Houston, and then a couple minutes to Henry as well to add their thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, well, just to close, I guess, on what Julia said, it really is about leveraging technology. A lot of things that Mr. Stokes was saying as you were talking, that's been a big chunk of my world for the past, 10 years. And one of the things we think about P4P is using let's say economic and fintech principles that are already in the marketplace, concepts around marketplaces, which have Amazons and Shopify's have, taken to the stratosphere, and applying the same business model, same concept, and bringing the technology together to create this ecosystem that Julius has mentioned. And we'll leave it there.
Henry?
Yes, and just from a people perspective, one of the things that we want people to understand is building on the whole marketplace concept. If not understand, but they'll feel. I think athletes understand this, is that many athletes have spent their careers, especially in sports where they know that it's they may not be the biggest athletes or the major names. They may not be in a sport that has a lot of global attention. Is that they want to they're competing against other athletes to be successful. It's either them or someone else. But this platform really shows that athletes together, we're stronger together. And that together, through the referral network, also through the fact that you make the platform and the marketplace larger and greater, you're starting to cross-pollinate people, cross-pollinate and provide benefits that go to other athletes, but also through your referral network come to you. So I think we're also putting we're trying to implement a new model with regard to doing business that I think resonates with athletes, resonates with the consumer, and obviously resonates with those on the Players for Players team, or anyone who's played on a team. We understand that collaboration, teamwork builds success for all of us.
Wonderful. Thank you for that presentation. And we, of course, get into the question and answer part of it now. Before I make comments, I will just open the floor for questions that we may want to ask our representatives from P4P.
Well, let me start. Some of the common questions that we get. One question would be how much is it free for an athlete to join P4P? The answer is yes, it is no cost to the athlete to join P4P. With respect to initial registration, we put a stay on the annual fee for several years because we understand that athletes are coming on and they need to build their network of fan base. So therefore, in that context, there's no cost to the athlete. And even then, it's not material. It's 2 or 3 years out, where it's like $35. But the point is, it's a thank you economy, meaning we want to make money for the athlete first before there's any fees associated. So that's one common question we get.
Great. No problem with that. Any questions from any? Because what we have done, of course, is to provide this platform because we have here well over 20 sporting associations. Sporting associations literally represent the athletes. And so we are anticipating that the takeaway from this is that they'll be able to communicate this to their athletes. And then from there, all the cross-fertilization can begin to take place.
Yes.
Questions, first and open.
I would love to grab the opportunity. We have a team on our road 3-4 months at a stretch. So we try to put in their educational activities and professional training, not just video games all day. Would you be available the team is in Lake Placid for another 3 weeks or so. Would it be available one evening to make a presentation to all the athletes?
Absolutely. We'd love to.
All right. So I just need to be connected to you.
Yes.
I guess Corinne, sorry.
Yes.
Is the best person for that. All right. Just one afternoon, and they're all very active. Things I don't understand. When Jamaica bobsleigh went viral before not before the internet, but before any social media. Yes. But these guys understand how to make themselves viral, which is language I'm trying to learn.
Yes.
And I think another question is that we typically get is around social media and the use of social media, especially around the retired athletes relative to the younger athletes. Maybe Houston, you can.
I have one question, Mr. Smith.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I? All right.
Sure.
In regards to the network of sponsors on your platform, is it possible to give us some examples of this in terms of how it might relate to an athlete that has been on the platform that was able to collaborate with a particular sponsor and how it was used?
Right. So we currently have a group called the Beyond the Game group, and they have, and they're a local, and this is what struck a chord with me, especially when I heard about the local associations. So they're a local in the community youth basketball organization. The sponsors that they're talking about are micro sponsors. So there's real estate companies, barbershop companies who they've known for quite some time, but they did not have a platform by which these micro sponsors could pay for and see the benefit of the children playing basketball. So what they've done is they came to P4P, and we created what we call a business page for this particular youth organization. This youth organization then already had the children playing, which means the parents. They will sign up for P4P. And therefore, the sponsors, it's very simple. The sponsors buy, if you will, packages which support the children. So to keep it very simple, let's say it costs $10 to have a child join a program for 10 weeks. The sponsor can buy a 10-pack, contribute $100, and they will see that this youth organization has identified 10 children to register for P4P, and they'll see them in the training videos. They'll see the children growing as athletes and as individuals. So that's an example of how we bring technology in a micro market to support athletes and associations in terms of our technology.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
I know it's a lot to take in. so it's you know, Mr. Stokes, I think you mentioned fintech, and I think Houston mentioned that point as well. So think of social media and the barriers that it is for people to monetize themselves. All the social media platforms put in, you need to have X number of followers. Well, we've dispensed with that. And therefore, athletes, if you have a fan base, if you're semi-professional, professional, and you have a fan base, or you want to grow your fan base, then P4P is the place to do that. Because what we do is we have a marketing team, and that was led by Ayana, who's going to create a social media persona for you, if you will. And based on that, our marketing team with our marketing dollars will be able to market. So I'll give you an example. Let's say 4 or 5 of the associations decided to work together, and we continued this conversation around associations teaming up. We could get the list of those athletes' names, those associations, those athletes could register. We could create a business page, and we use the business page on P4P for that team of athletes, So we could then use Stripe to make the allocations amongst the associations. Once those team of athletes start monetizing their collective brand. And that's why when I listen to the conversation about working together, P4P offers you that platform, and it's global. It's internet, it's global. So overnight, you have an opportunity to find out if there's lacrosse, where's lacrosse popular in other countries? So then our marketing team takes a look at that, and we start using social media to say, hey, have you heard about the lacrosse and equestrian team of Jamaica? Oh, do you want to buy their paraphernalia? So those engagement between the athlete, the sport, the athlete, and people's desires to have Jamaican paraphernalia, be associated with Jamaica and their athletes. That's what P4P does. that's what we do. And that brings us great joy because we know that in a sense, we've turned the economics upside down. We've put at the heart of it the athlete, the association that's associated with that athlete, and we're leveraging that opportunity to make money from sports, the global world of sports. So I'm hoping I'm talking that people are getting ideas about how you could be by yourself and register your athletes, or you can work together and register and create a smaller, from a small to medium-sized association to work with V4P. Happy to have that conversation.
When Chris asked the question about whether or not you'd be willing to speak to one day, like after training, and you said yes. To me, from our perspective, the effort that has gone into this, we felt that payback had already come. Okay. Because we are about the development of sports. And so we are ultimately facilitators. And while we have been very deeply entrenched in the build out of sporting infrastructure across Jamaica and providing some assistance to the national associations, that sort of thing, I now have this feeling that we have not created, but we have benefited from yet another platform by which we can assist. And having provided this facilitation here, it's just wonderful for me. I just feel like the SDF is here again, providing. And so it is really great to have had this. And when we started those series of meetings with the groups of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we did say at some point in time we were going to come together. We didn't get all 57 today because by the end of those sessions, we had met with as many as 57 sporting associations. But I'm sure the word will spread. And the fact that we have recorded the proceedings today, it means that we have made significant progress. I want to express thanks to Chris, first of all, from the moment he mentioned in his presentation in one of those small group meetings of some successes that they had experienced after many trials. And we know that when that comes, it's probably better than somebody who has just started, and as you start, you have success. It's the trial and failure that gives that experience so that you can say to someone, when you fail, don't give up, just get up and go again. We have a tremendous communication. I have learned a lot, and I suspect that we all have this morning. I want to thank those who have presented, Nelson, Julius, and his team. I want to thank Ms. Grant, Marjorie Grant, who put us together with P for Poor. And while she's not a part, P for P, sorry. Forgive me. I was thinking about myself. It's been a great session. The presentations were great, but out of this, the connections that have been made, we don't have to come back here like this for you now to communicate with each other and start to build. And then every now and then we come together like this again to tell of the successes or to bring more people, because we didn't get all the representation that we would have liked today, but we had enough to make me feel very satisfied that we have presented a platform today for our collaborative approach. I want to also thank Ms. Clark, who is with us here. She's our Association Services Officer, and right about now she wants to have an input.
Sir, I'd love to find out if they could submit their PowerPoint presentations.
Submit?
The PowerPoint presentations.
Ms. Clark is asking that the PowerPoint presentation, if you could share it with us electronically, the presentations from you, Nelson, and from Julius and your team. We would love if we could get your presentation. We hope we're not breaching any confidentiality clauses.
Sure, happy to share.
Okay, wonderful. And we look forward to meeting like this again. So thank you all for being part of this. Goodbye, have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see each other again not too long from now.
Very well done, General.
Thank you.